The long-awaited Zenith VR is finally available, and today we are gonna be reviewing how good this VR MMO really is. So let's start at the beginning. Now the first thing you will be doing in Zenith is creating your own character, and you can play around with customizable details, with things like facial types, skin colors, and hairstyles. And even though that the character customization is very limited, Ramen VR did state that they will be adding a lot more unique ways to customize your character soon. Now after you are done with creating your look, you can choose between two classes, that being the Blade Master or the Mage. And essentially, deciding for Blade Master is for up-close melee combat, where you can dual-wield swords to defeat your enemies. Where on the other hand, the Mage class uses range-style magic attacks. Now even though of there just being two classes, for each of them there are also three subclasses, those being Tank, DPS, and Support. With the tank subclass being used to take the damage in the party, focusing more on the defense side of the battle, while the DPS is the damage dealer of the party. And lastly, the support, who is there to keep everybody healthy while the battle is going. So no matter what kind of battle style you like, there will be a right class for you to fit in. And this is also a big factor on how you play the game. So make sure you think about what suits you best before you get going. Luckily, the game does allow you to change subclasses at any time. But do keep in mind, this does not count for the main class. Which gets us to the game itself. Zenith itself is an open world VR game. This means that there are huge open areas for players to explore in whatever way they want. But unlike other open world games, Zenith throws in some special features that make this game so much better. With probably the most important one being the social aspect of this game. Because in this game, you can form parties with your friends or people you meet during your adventures. And by doing so, taking on different challenges that normally would be too difficult to face alone. You can even start forming your own guild, where your teammates can have different roles depending on the enemy you're trying to defeat. And this is also one of the things that surprised me the most. Because while playing Zenith, I quickly met some awesome people with who I was forming strategies on what was the best way to take down this high level boss. And being able to pull it off and celebrate it with your teammates feels really amazing. And the communication system is also very intuitive, where you can just talk using your microphone, and most of the time a lot of hand gestures as well. And that's where VR MMOs become so powerful, because the social interaction in VR makes you feel so much more immersed into the game world, where it sometimes really feels like you're inside the game itself. Now the player can explore the world of Zenith to their heart's content, and they do this in an interesting way, because there are a lot of different options in how you can get from point A to B. Instead of only just normal walking, you can also climb up almost anything you can see, or jump off a huge mountain and glide all the way across the world, which is very similar to something we see in Population 1, but makes it feel even more amazing to see this beautiful land right beneath your feet. But you can also swim through lakes, where your body movement actually makes a difference, where moving your arms in a swimming motion actually increases your speed, or zipline through forest areas to get faster to your destination. And it was these many different ways of exploring that really piqued my interest, because finding out different ways to reach a certain treasure when you thought it was impossible makes it so much more worth it. But besides exploring, you will also be fighting a lot in this game. And that's where the combat system kicks in. Now either way of what class system you chose, the combat will be based on your own skills. That means how well you will be able to swing your swords or cast your spells. And this is also what makes VR MMOs stand out, because you as the player have to actually swing those swords to destroy your enemies. And to be honest, when I was fighting against some bosses as the Blade Master, I was getting a proper workout, blocking and slashing my enemies as quick as I could. And I think this creates such a nice touch to the game, where the fight is not only dependent on the gear that you're wearing, but also on the skill of the player. And seeing myself improve in using two swords was probably the coolest thing I've experienced in VR in a long time. But one of the favorite parts of this game that really surprised me was the cooking system. Now going into this game, I never expected that I would enjoy this so much. But the cooking system in Zenith is so simple yet unique that it is so fun. I can't remember how many times me and my friends were creating and learning new recipes while trying to make sure that our pancakes don't burn or soups overcook, while at the same time trying to gather ingredients to create some crazy recipes. And the meals that you eventually created can then also be used in battle. battle, for healing, buffs, and much more. Besides all these amazing things, we should also talk about things that could still be improved on, with one of them being the servers itself, with after a few hours of launch, where the servers were experiencing an outage due to a massive influx of players, where the studio quickly had to take the servers down to provide for several updates. And now that the server is back up and running, there are still some users that are experiencing some issues, though the developer did say they will be looking into this and fixing it as soon as possible. And of course we do have to keep in mind that launch issues like this are very common, and that some outages around a full launch are almost inevitable, and on the other side give a good indication of how many people are excited to play this game. Now, one more thing that I would have loved to see to make this game even better is if they would make the crafting system similar to that of the cooking system. Because unlike the cooking system we talked about before, the crafting system is very straightforward, where you can create your items by choosing the different materials you found during battle and just pulling a lever. I would have loved to see a small mini game where you might have to hammer down on a sword to upgrade its stats, but this would just be an extra to make the game even better than it already is. It is also important to note that this game is actually cross-play. That means that if your friends are playing on a PlayStation VR while you are playing the game on the Quest 2, you could still all play together, as long as you are on the same server, which also makes it so much easier to play with friends that do not have the same VR headset. Now, Ramen VR said that the game itself at launch will have an initial 100 hours of gameplay built into it, but the studio said that it is an ever-expanding live service MMO, which means that they will be adding extra content like quests, new areas, or even big events and new storylines over time for free. And probably one of the most important things being is that this game is not pay to win. There will be, however, the possibility to buy cosmetic skins in the future, but these will only affect the way your character looks and have no effect on any in-game stats. Now, the game itself has only recently launched at a price of $30 with no extra subscriptions, meaning that when you buy this game you will get the full experience, including all the future updates. And not long after it launched, it quickly climbed up all the way to the #1 top-selling game on Steam. And keep in mind, this isn't a VR specific category. This is for every game on Steam itself. That means Zenith is currently beating out pre-orders for games like Dying Light and Elden Ring. But that gets us to the final thoughts. Zenith The Lost City is a VR MMO RPG that surpassed my expectations. From a great combat system to amazing exploration and a great way of adding in the social aspect of VR, while at the same time giving it a unique twist with a lot of things to look forward to in the future. I think this is one of the best VR games to play right now. So make sure you take out your swords to slay all those goblins, and I will see you in VR.